And you're watching Record Television Uganda, and this is the Daybreaker Morning Show. We are now looking at the topical discussion, and we shall be looking at the Trump-Biden just concluded elections, the effects that it has on Africa. What lessons do we learn from this, and where is Africa heading after the new president that has actually been elected into office? Because we've seen majority of these actually have their own interests, some of which may affect Pan-Africanism because of the beliefs they have in them. So we shall be dissecting this morning key issues in regard to this to understand better how best can America as a superpower nation come out to see that it probably contributes to the development and betterment of democracy in Africa. Now with me in studio, I have two gentlemen, Mr. Rugarama Daniel, who is the chairperson of the Pan-African movement here in Uganda, and one of the administrators at the Pan-African movement, who is Newton Balenzi, and we shall be dissecting these issues, and probably one of the gentlemen from California, Mr. Keidi Awadu, will be joining us live on Zoom to understand more of the issues we are talking about here. But with me in studio, I would love to give these gentlemen a chance to first say hello to the viewers out there.
Good morning, comrades, wherever you may be. It's a pleasant morning this Friday to be with you.
Thank you so much.
Good morning, dear viewers, and I send you salutations. I wish you a blessed watching.
I hope everything is well as we go on with this. You know, a lot has gone on within the week, and so much actually during elections. Before probably we could go to the topic in just about maybe a minute, for both of you, each a minute. I would love to understand what you make of the situation currently in the country in regards to the elections, now that we are in an election period and we are going to discuss elections in America.
Oh yes, thank you. What has happened within this week, it's quite unfortunate, which that has befallen our country's democracy, per se. We are having elections in quite a very unique season period, where the world is grappling seriously with the pandemic. We have seen dire effects even here in our country. Besides the sick, who have now, the numbers have really accumulated, and we've been told that all our intensive care units are filled up with the sick. The ministry can no longer even afford to conduct the burial ceremonies. We've been told that now when somebody passes on, they just advise you on how to do it. They give you a sealed body and you conduct the burial. We are seeing countries in Europe imposing full lockdowns as well as partial. But also, we also seeing again demonstrations in the same countries protesting these lockdowns. Actually, some have even gone to court. Here in neighboring Kenya, the court just ruled recently that the president didn't have the powers to lock down schools. So a lot is happening. But also the same pandemic, I'm still giving a background to the pandemic. The same pandemic has been one of the key determining issues to who was supposed to win the U.S. elections. And because President-elect Biden presented maybe a better roadmap towards fighting the pandemic, he actually won. Coming back here, Africa has had quite a unique experience with COVID-19. So far, we are the only continent which has registered quite few number of infections as well as fatalities. Now, this one is quite attributed to a number of factors, some of which is that maybe the disease affects mainly the aged and yet Africa is a very young continent. Personally, you can't believe, these days I'm amazed that I'm young, I feel I'm young and I look young, but can you imagine I'm no longer part of the 75% of the population? It's funny, I'm among the 25%. So this has partly contributed to our low fatalities. However, the disease is serious and people are dying. Even one of our colleagues recently lost their daughter. She was young, she lost breath, she couldn't be supported and she passed on. So under these circumstances, at the same time we have politics. And you know, politics is another activity which makes us happy, joyful, to express our feelings and emotions. And now that one has caused the biggest impasse in our politics. People feel like we should be left to enjoy. We should be left to express our feelings, solidarity, and fun. And boom, SOPs are not being followed. Okay. They are very difficult to impose, and one of the, some of 3 or 4 presidential and the other candidates were arrested. And some young people decided to come on the streets to demonstrate. But the way they were demonstrating was, I regard it was unnecessary, uncalled for. As a person of this age who belongs to 25%, it means I'm more experienced. These feelings should be managed. I wonder why the leadership of NUP cannot advise their supporters, because these people claim they are supporters of NUP, and the NUP has not distanced itself from them. Yes, they are Ugandans. I wonder why NUP cannot come out and tell people that the situation is worse. Don't confront security agencies. Protect your lives. Stay at home. As we sort this matter through dialogue, through courts of law, through lobbying. I wonder why. And we are seeing a very ugly situation. Personally, I'm concerned so much with the issue with an image of Uganda outside as a Pan-Africanist, because all I want is to people continuing coming to Uganda to invest, to relocate. We want our brothers to relocate from the diaspora. We want our people also to move from here. You go to another country, when you are respected, they know you have gone there to sell democracy, because we've been progressing in that. But now with these images, it brings us another big cost to convince people who are coming here for our oil, for the minerals, to invest in agriculture, that it is all well. It is quite unfortunate.
Well, Mr. Rugarama, you hear Newton putting on points right there, saying the current situation in the country actually brings about fear in regard to the people that come to this country, and which directly affects Pan-Africanism. And that's to him. It's been a beehive of activities this week, ever since you last appeared on this show last week on Friday. What do you make of these events as we head to our topical discussion?
You see, Comrade, very quickly on this. My brother here has mentioned so many things. I would not take that path, but I appreciate that contribution. When you do not have a brand of your own democracy, this is what you suffer. I can assure you that the unfolding events in Uganda now, which is not new, we've seen it before. We saw even worse with retired Colonel Dr. Chiza Besigye, you remember. On the African continent, generally speaking, we have seen very ugly situations, and there is a general feeling, especially from those who run the media, that this is how Africans do their thing. No. It's very embarrassing now that even the so-called utopia of democracy, America, is grappling with it is suffering from its own democratic paths. Uganda, and especially when you look at these arrests of the presidential candidates and what have you, you do not take away the fact that here is a situation whereby we are grappling with the virus, coronavirus, and there are guidelines that have been issued from Ministry of Health that go through to Electoral Commission. Now these guidelines must be adhered to. Frankly speaking, we've got the rule of law. And the rule of law, if the population that has decided to join active politics under a political party or individual merit is not governed, is not structured, does not move through the structures, then you are not going to have any organized way of doing things. It is therefore very perturbing when you hear situations like we've had through social media, sentiments, tribal sentiments being disseminated down to the population. We've had situations of let whatever is happening be spread to the rest of the world. We've had the European Union claim they are not going to send observers. I listened to it last night, to Uganda, as if we derive our legitimacy from the European Union. We've had the likes of Amsterdam, who claim that Uganda should be cut off. And they do it to the rest of the other countries anyway. It's not just Uganda, we're talking about Uganda. So in a nutshell, therefore, if Uganda and Africa and the rest of the world, like China did, do not develop their own brand of democracy, under which elections are conducted, we are going to still suffer what you see here. Because what is being done may not necessarily be our own.
Well, that's Mr. Rugarama. Daniel, for you. On my screen, I can actually see Mr. Keidi Awadu there as I wait for the technical team to actually get his sound to get to us here. He will be joining us shortly live from California to interest himself in the issues we are discussing here, to understand more of actually what goes ahead. But as we go ahead with the topical discussion and as we wait for Mr. Keidi Awadu to actually join us and be part of this conversation, I would love to understand, starting with you, Mr. Newton. Comrade Balenzi, yes. So I would love to understand, here comes an election, there is a president-elect. One of them says that, I can't concede to defeat. I'm actually going to court to ensure that this election is annulled because it's void. It doesn't count. What do you make of such? Because we've seen Dr. Kanokiza Besigye trash election results here in Uganda before because of a lot of malpractices. So if a country like America comes out actually to mention this, what could be your take on such comments from?
Maybe from now on we may redefine the terms used, free and fair. Free, this is from me. Free as in you are free to participate. Fair, when you are in school and you are given a fair mark, it's not an excellent mark. Fair that it has reached some minimal standards to be accepted as an election. So now, was the American election free and fair? Yes, people were allowed to vote. That's being free and to participate. Fair, yes, to the standards. However, what America is suffering from is the reality. But also we must know this reality. In the United States, it's only one party participating in these elections. One party. And one, what do I say? The Democrats, who are more liberal, and the Republicans, who could say are more conservative. And that's why today, when Trump was campaigning, he used to say, the way he was campaigning Biden and the Democrats is that they were taking America into socialism by promoting policies such as Obamacare, which would be supporting the vulnerable or the less privileged. But now here comes the conservative radical Trump, who doesn't give a damn, but apart from American interests and making business, losing the election. Now we have come to the reality, because Trump has not been a seasoned politician. He's not a diplomat. He has no diplomacy in his tongue at all. So he can't bear with certain standards which were being set by other people. Whereas Biden, if Biden was the one who had lost, he would concede, make a concession speech immediately there and then. He has been in politics. He's a diplomat. That's why he will always speak, but you'll never understand what is really meaning or behind his thoughts. That's why Obama came to Africa and said, oh, we are good and all that. At the same time, he sanctioned the attack on Libya without minding what Libya was helping the rest of Africa, or African Union for that matter. So, it is just the reality. In a democracy, power is for competition. People must fight to win it. People must fight to protect it. So Trump is not doing anything wrong. Actually, Trump is now playing the real democracy, where you have to fight for power, you must retain power. Simple.
Okay, Mr. Rugarama Daniel, tracing the comments Trump has actually made, some of which I would say are uncouth, I would term them that way. Where does this leave the internal democracy, firstly, of America, before we move maybe to the rest of the world?
Thank you once again. You see, the higher you go on any scale in life, the more you expose yourself to the rest of the world. America has, for a very long time, deceived the rest of the world that they are at a certain level of democracy, such that they could act as a Magna Carta to the rest of the world. Now this is not true, has never been true, is not true, and probably will not be true 100 years to come. Trump, in my opinion, with all due respect, is very unfortunate to the people of America. You cannot be a president, even if you're a president of the smallest country, and you conduct yourself in a manner that is very dishonorable. The words that he has used to the press, for instance, the comments he has lashed out to the rest of the world, Africa in particular, were extremely unacceptable of a president. The words he has used against his competitors throughout the race, right from the first Republican competition, primaries, when he became the president and recently, are very ugly and unacceptable of even the smallest elective office, not just in America, but in the rest of the world. It is therefore not far-fetched for one to draw a conclusion that if Trump got over 71 million votes in so-called utopian democracy called America, then it so follows that we still have a big problem in that society whereby morals and values are actually not a priority. And yet, in a true democracy, we look at values. At the same time, the Trump-Biden electoral campaign and currently what is happening, court processes, refusal to accept defeat is a very clear message to the rest of the world that even in America, it is not yet Uhuru.
Well, that's Daniel Rugarama, the chairman of the Pan-African movement here in Uganda, discussing about what's going on actually currently in America. If you've just joined us, this is the Daybreaker Morning Show. My name is John Jimmy Musimbi, and we are discussing the impact of America's democracy on the rest of the world. Now we take a short break, and Daybreaker returns shortly.
This is an announcement. Campaign period for general elections 2021. The Electoral Commission has appointed the period indicated in the table below for the purpose of conducting candidates' campaign meetings for presidential, parliamentary, and local government council elections 2021. 1. Presidential elections will start on 9th November 2020 and finish on the 12th of January 2021. 2. Parliamentary elections, directly elected MP and district woman representative to Parliament will start on 9th November 2020 to 12th January 2021. 3. City, District Local Government Council, Lord Mayor, Mayors, Chairpersons and Councillors will start on the 9th of November 2020 to the 18th of January 2021. 4. Municipality, City Division Chairpersons and Councillors will start on the 9th of November 2020 and finish on 23rd of January 2021. 5. Sub-County, Town, Municipal Division Chairpersons and Councillors will start on the 9th of November 2020 to 1st of February 2021. The Electoral Commission urges all political parties and organizations, candidates, their agents, supporters, and the general public to carefully observe the guidelines for this campaign period. All persons attending campaign meetings shall be required to comply with the guidelines issued by the Electoral Commission in accordance with the Government of Uganda and the Ministry of Health measures against the spread of COVID-19. This includes observing social distancing, hand washing, and wearing of masks.
Well, welcome back from that short commercial break. It's a very interactive session here behind the scenes as we are off air with this gentleman, trying to bring up to speed some of the key issues we are discussing about here. This is Daybreaker Morning Show. My name is John Jimmy Musimbi, and Record TV is the Elections Analysis Center. The hashtag is UG Polls 2021. Now, as we are moving forward, discussing the topic is America's impact on the rest of the world, especially Africa, in regards to the democracy, giving insights on the elections that have actually just taken place, and President Donald Trump refutes the results from these elections, saying, hey, look, I can't take them on because I feel they've not been free and fair. And Comrade Balenzi comes out to define free and fair in his own terms and perspective. But well, we bring in Comrade Keidi Awadu live from California. Keidi, good morning and say hello to the Record TV viewers.
Greetings, good morning to all of our Record TV viewers in Uganda. To you, my brother, John Jimmy Masimba, what a joy it is to hear your voice. And to my beloved comrades from the Pan-African movement, Uganda, what a joy it is to be in the circle today.
Mr. Keidi, just to throw in this probably before we continue, have you paid attention to the elections in Uganda and how far they are faring up to date, especially the events that have been prevailing in the country in this week?
I do my best to stay tuned to a number of African countries that I believe have a very special place in the emergence of what we call Africa rising. And I definitely see Uganda as one of the rising stars. Over the course of the decades, I've done my best to pay close attention to the political affairs there. I understand that the contest for the presidency that will be taking place in the coming year is starting to heat up. And the thing about it is that I find the Western press so often has such a bias against democracy and democratic elections in African countries, and has shown quite a bit of bias over the years against the presidency of His Excellency President Museveni, that I have to be very cautious about accepting what I get across U.S. media at face value. But I'm proud of my Ugandan family, and I do look forward to another successful, peaceful, democratic election in the Republic of Uganda.
Well, you highlight actually key issues about the Western press actually being a little bit hostile to the elections this way, the presidency of Mr. Yoweri Museveni and everything going on currently in the country. Those are some of the key issues we think that probably need to be outright, and interference of actually Western powers into African politics has actually cost the African continent a lot on the negative side. So before I get back to the people here in studio, I would love to get your take on America as a superpower country of the United States, and then the elections that have just happened there. What do you make of the entire process, right from the campaign period to the casting of the votes, to the announcement of the elections, and the comments that come thereafter? Where do you think this leaves the world at large?
Oh, what a complicated mess this has become. On one hand, America, the superpower that dominated the world after the fall of the Soviet Union. Now America has seen within the last few years its global empire kind of coming to dire stages. Some say the global empire is at an end, and that America, having to turn inside of itself to see its future, has to deal with some very hostile polarization in the country. There was a Norwegian researcher by the name of Johan Galtung who put out a book that said the collapse of the American empire, what next? And he predicted that the US empire, and he predicted this over 20 years ago, would actually collapse. The global empire would collapse somewhere around the year 2025. After the second George Bush became president, he changed that year to 2020. And here we have Donald Trump now coming into the US presidency, inaugurated in 2017. And it's probably fulfilled that promise of the collapse of a global empire as much as any one single individual could have contributed. Now we have the domestic scene. And as I'm sure you've been able to tell by the headlines reaching around the world, America has become terribly polarized. The red versus the blue. In certain ways, we do see a rise of fascism. So when it comes to democracy, there's a question, how well can democracy persist in such a polarized society? especially when we have an underperforming population education-wise. And so many times people are forming very strong opinions, but they're not really doing any research other than just what they're getting from news, provocative news headlines and propaganda put out by the political parties. Democracy also has a very difficult time coexisting with the concentration of wealth and income, such as happened in the United States. The United States is experiencing the highest concentration of wealth and income in over 100 years, with just a handful of individuals making as much income now as half of the middle class population in the country. So despite all of the shortcomings and handicaps of the COVID pandemic year and the disruption to business all across the board, Jeff Bezos, who is the head of Amazon, Washington Post, and a few other major corporations under that umbrella of Amazon, Jeff Bezos managed to make $13 billion in one day. Meanwhile, unemployment, tens of thousands of people, tens of millions of people are unemployed, businesses shut down, Black-owned business are in a catastrophic decline. And so, despite all of this, there is reason to be hopeful. And I'm reminded of those words because, America has been so harsh to African countries and other countries around the world when it comes to their conducting democratic elections. But I'm reminded of those words of the brilliant Comrade Malcolm X. Malcolm X said, "Chickens coming home to roost never made me sad. In fact, they made me glad." And so Donald Trump has been America's chickens come home to roost. And it does appear that the opposition to Donald Trump has gained the sufficient votes to be able to claim inauguration in January. But both parties, and I'll make this as brief as I possibly can, but I'm very, very troubled by the Democrats coming in because the Democrats are known to engage in a number of policies that are very harmful to the Black community, to the Black family especially. Both parties have essentially a corporatist, plutocratic mission or a policy that overrides everything. But when we look at the African American family, in particular African American community, two things. One is more and more of us are now looking to Africa as our right and natural future, our destiny, Africa rising. But secondly, it has become catastrophic for the Black family and community in America. I've recently done a series of studies on demographics. And in 1960, Black women had enough babies to sustain us generation after generation after generation. A woman in 1960 at that fertility rate would have produced 151 great-great-grandchildren. But today, African American fertility has fallen far below replacement. And so today, in that same woman entering her childbearing age years, 4 generations later, 2 parents would produce 1.23 great-great-grandchildren versus the 151 of her great-great-grandmother's generation. So we're going to have to be particularly vigilant here because the Democrats, and Uganda is also going to have to be particularly vigilant as well, because the Democrats come in with certain liberal family policies that are at odds and incompatible with our African valuation of the family, of children, etc. We do know that under the last Democratic president of the United States, an undue amount of pressure was put on Uganda, Ghana, Nigeria, and other countries because they did not want to accept the Western policies regarding gender ambiguity. The idea that a person could be born one gender and then decide one day they want to be the other gender or a middle gender or just make up one on the spot. So every one of us should be alert for many things, but let me tell you, Uganda, the youngest or second youngest nation on the planet, values children. African Americans, under liberal policies of the Democratic Party, have lost the valuation of children, and that puts our group in very big trouble.
Well, that's Mr. Keidi Awadu, the comrade from Live California, coming to us here, giving insights actually on very critical issues. Before we actually go to our next question, in just 30 seconds, Mr. Rugarama Daniel, what do you make of the comments he's making? I feel there is need to respond to them.
I absolutely agree with my brother, Comrade Chief Keidi. The policies, the American policies, foreign policy towards Africa, so to say, really doesn't change with the changing presidents in the White House. Bottom line, Africa must look for solutions from inside itself. But the hope that change in presidency from Democrat to Republican will provide an answer to our problems is nothing but a fallacy.
Well, I think, Mr. Newton, before we move ahead, what do you make of these comments as well?
Thank you. Brother Keidi gave us more insightful into the internal situation in the United States, especially mainly on the effects on the black community. And most importantly is the issue to do with liberalism. But I don't know why, but it's okay. He got scared to mention it rightly, that Joe Biden is known for the last over 25 years to be a very big supporter of LGBTQ+, commonly known here as homosexuals. Of course, here we have a few groups around. And so with their coming in, we know that the campaign is going to be a little bit, we will see a policy coming in to like make it much vividly open and strong. Thank you for the water. To see that the matters of homosexuality are put at forefront in the agenda in Africa. So we are going to see again aid being tied to whether you support or you don't support homosexuality. So Africa should brace for that. There is much more freedom now for homosexuals.
Okay, Mr. Daniel Rugarama would love to understand, what does America's democracy mean to the rest of the world, especially on the African continent?
Yes, once again, thank you. I want to be very categorical here that American democracy means nothing to African continent. First of all, American democracy is a hoax. They do not believe even in their own democracy. Because the brand of democracy in America is a brand whereby those with take it all. Those without, as much as possible, remain without. And even the little that they have is also taken away, especially when it comes to in exercising its foreign policy. What we do get, for instance, here in Uganda, you remember there was this AGOA, whereby we got a share. Americans opened a market for the fabric, the Ugandan fabric. And what became of that was one must look at what was the share bringing in terms of income to the Ugandan economy vis-a-vis what America was taking out of the Ugandan economy. When you look at the policies that are framed, especially you look at the military, for instance, policy, the Obama regime increased the military establishments on the African continent, and yet the public does not know much about that. In the Obama administration, which majority of the African countries thought was actually our administration, President Obama being a son of a Kenyan here, far from it, that a country like Ghana, for instance, which we look up to when it comes to Pan-Africanism, a country of Osejefo, Nkwame Nkrumah, for the very first time, the Obama administration penetrated and opened one of the biggest military bases on the African continent. Now we know what that means. When recently in Iraq, during Trump administration, when they were killing that guided missile that killed the so-called rebel, and Iran threatened to withdraw all troops and dismantle the establishments of America, including the military base, then Trump reminded them that you will have to pay for all the costs of the construction of that same base. Of course, you can say, no, we are not going to do it. But you see, because of the banking systems, they have got your money elsewhere, and they are able to freeze it, so they will pay themselves. So, at the end of the day, the democracy in America, whether it is from the Democratic point of view or the Republican point of view, to the African continent, it can only